Sabrina learned early on that silence could be louder than sound. It was the kind of silence that sat beside her during rehearsals, humming where laughter should be. The kind that followed her even when the piano keys were alive beneath practiced fingers and voices blended into something beautiful. For everyone else, the chorale room was a sanctuary, a place where voices soared and worries dissolved into melody. For Sabrina, it was where her heart learned how to ache quietly. She stood among her fellow chorale members, posture perfect, folder held at the precise angle their conductor demanded. Her lips shaped vowels with practiced ease, her voice weaving effortlessly into harmony. No one would ever guess that every note she sang was threaded with longing, because standing just 2 spaces away from her was Mark. Mark, with his easy smile and warm laugh. Mark, who never failed to greet her with a casual "Hey, Sab," as if her heart didn't skip every time he said her name. Mark, whose presence felt like sunlight, bright, comforting, and completely out of reach. He was friendly, kind, thoughtful, and hopelessly in love with someone else. The girl who sang beside him, Sabrina, couldn't remember exactly when her feelings for Mark had crossed from admiration into something deeper. It had happened quietly, like music swelling beneath a conversation until suddenly it filled the room. They had joined the college chorale at the same time. Freshmen, both nervous and eager, both holding their music folders too tightly. Mark had joked about getting lost on campus, and she had laughed too loudly, she realized now. From then on, he had always been there, during rehearsals, after practice dinners, group study sessions that turned into late-night conversations, but there was always her. Lena, bright, confident, effortlessly charming, the kind of girl who drew people toward her without trying. The way Mark looked at Lena was unmistakable, and Sabrina, standing just beside him, learned how to smile through it. Smiles that hurt practice days became exercises in endurance. Sabrina perfected the art of pretending she didn't notice the way Mark leaned closer to Lena during breaks, pretending her chest didn't tighten when he laughed at jokes she didn't hear, pretending she wasn't breaking in small, invisible ways. "Great job today, everyone," their conductor announced one afternoon. "Nationals are just weeks away." National chorale competition. It sent a ripple of excitement through the room. 5 days in another city, a chance to compete on a national stage. For Sabrina, it meant 5 days of pretending even harder. She clapped with everyone else. A smile fixed her heart weary. Part of her wanted to back out, to find an excuse, any excuse not to go. But she loved music, and she loved the chorale, so she stayed. Harmonies and heartbreak. Late that night, Sabrina lay awake in her dorm room, staring at the ceiling as the sounds of campus life faded into quiet. She replayed moments she wished she could forget. Mark thanking her for always being supportive. Mark asking her advice about Lena. Mark trusting her with feelings that were never meant for her. Tears slipped silently down her temples, soaking into her pillow. She wiped them away quickly, as if someone might see, even though no one was there. "I'll be okay," she whispered into the dark. She always said that, and somehow she always believed it. Almost, but never. There were moments, brief, dangerous moments, when Sabrina thought maybe Mark lingered too long beside her during warm-ups. Maybe the way his voice softened when he spoke her name meant something more. Maybe she wasn't imagining the warmth in his smile when their eyes met across the room. But every maybe dissolved the moment Lena entered the picture. That afternoon, during sectional practice, Mark leaned over and whispered, "Hey, can you listen to this line? I'm not sure if I'm phrasing it right." Sabrina nodded, her heart betraying her calm exterior. She listened carefully, offering gentle suggestions, careful not to let her fingers brush his arm. When he smiled in gratitude, her chest tightened. "You're really good at this," he said. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "Without you." The words felt intimate until he added, "You remind me of my sister sometimes, always looking out for everyone." The invisible line reappeared, clearer than ever. Sabrina laughed lightly, the sound practiced. Inside, something quietly folded in on itself. The official announcement came on a Friday afternoon. Their chorale had been selected to compete in the National Collegiate Chorale Competition. Flights, accommodations, schedules, all carefully planned. Applause erupted. Sabrina clapped with everyone else, adrenaline buzzing through her veins. She loved performing, loved the challenge, loved the idea of standing on a national stage. But 5 days of shared meals, rehearsals, late nights, conversations she didn't want to overhear. She caught Mark's eye as he turned toward Lena, excitement lighting his face. "This is huge," he said, grinning. "It really is," Sabrina replied, her voice steady. She wondered if she could survive 5 days without unraveling. The airport was loud, chaotic, buzzing with anticipation. Sabrina clutched her boarding pass, her stomach churning, not just from nerves, but something deeper. She wasn't fond of flying. The pressure, the movement, the feeling of being suspended in midair unsettled her. As the plane ascended, dizziness washed over her. The cabin seemed to tilt. Her ears rang. Cold sweat formed along her temples. She squeezed her eyes shut, breathing shallowly. "Sabrina," someone asked, but the voice sounded far away. By the time the seatbelt sign turned off, nausea surged. She stood unsteadily, intent on finding the restroom, but the aisle blurred. Her legs weakened. Hands guided her gently, voices overlapping. When she finally opened her eyes, she was seated near the back, her group nowhere in sight. The flight attendant offered water, concern etched into her expression. "You'll be okay," she said kindly, but Sabrina felt small, alone, disoriented, separated not just from her group, but from everything familiar. Lost among strangers by the time they arrived at the hotel. Sabrina felt better physically, but emotionally she was frayed. She'd been reunited with her group eventually, though embarrassment lingered. Everyone was kind, understanding, but exhaustion clung to her bones. That evening, after settling into her room, the walls began to feel too close. She needed air. Wrapping herself in a light jacket, she stepped outside into the cool night. The city hummed softly, lights flickering like distant stars. She leaned against the railing, breathing deeply. Then the dizziness returned. Her vision swayed, panic fluttered in her chest. She swayed forward and was caught. Strong arms steadied her, firm yet gentle. "Whoa, easy," a voice said. She looked up into unfamiliar eyes, warm, steady, concerned. "I've got you." Her breath caught, not from fear this time, but from the unexpected comfort of being held by someone who felt solid, grounding. "I'm Dylan," he said softly. "You okay?" For the first time in days. Sabrina didn't force a smile. I think so." And somehow she believed it. The city greeted Sabrina the next morning with pale sunlight and the distant sound of traffic. From her hotel window, buildings rose in neat rows, unfamiliar yet full of promise. 5 days. She repeated the thought like a quiet mantra as she dressed for the day's first rehearsal. The dizziness from the flight had faded, leaving behind only a dull ache and a lingering sense of vulnerability. At breakfast, her chorale buzzed with energy. Schedules were compared, rehearsal times memorized. Laughter echoed across the dining area. Mark sat across from Lena, their heads bent together in conversation. Sabrina focused on her plate, reminding herself to eat, to breathe, to stay present. As they headed toward the rehearsal hall, her thoughts drifted back to the night before. Dylan, the stranger who had caught her without hesitation, the warmth in his voice, the way he hadn't rushed her, hadn't made her feel weak or embarrassed. She wondered if she would see him again. That afternoon between rehearsals, Sabrina stepped into the hallway, hoping for a quiet moment to collect herself. "Hey," the voice was familiar now. She turned, surprised and oddly pleased to see Dylan standing a few feet away, hands tucked casually into his jacket pockets. "Feeling better today?" he asked. She nodded. "Much, thank you for last night." "Anytime," he said easily. "Nationals can be a lot, especially if you're not feeling great." She smiled, this time without effort. They talked first about trivial things, the city, the competition, their respective schools. Dylan was part of a chorale from another university also competing. "You sing?" she asked. "Yeah," he replied, almost dismissively. "I guess you could say that." There was something unassuming about him that put her at ease. He didn't try to impress her, didn't ask too many questions. When rehearsal time came, they parted ways with an easy wave. Sabrina returned to her group feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Conversations between breaths over the next 2 days, their paths crossed often. Sometimes it was in the lobby, other times in quiet corners of the venue or during meal breaks. Each encounter felt unplanned, yet strangely timed. They talked about music, what it meant to them, how it had shaped their lives. Dylan listened with genuine interest, never interrupting, never dismissing her thoughts. "You care deeply," he said once. "It shows." She blinked, startled. No one had said that to her in a long time. Between conversations, Sabrina noticed something else, the way Dylan watched her. Not intensely, not intrusively, but attentively. She caught him glancing at her during group gatherings, his gaze thoughtful. And once, just once, she noticed him looking at Mark, then back at her, as if connecting dots she hadn't realized were visible. "You okay?" he asked quietly that evening. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, just tired." But he didn't look convinced. Dylan had a talent for appearing at just the right moments. When rehearsal ran long and Sabrina felt overwhelmed, he was there with a quiet joke. When nerves threatened to surface, he offered reassurance without words, a smile, a nod, a shared silence. One afternoon, as they stood near the windows overlooking the city, he said softly, "You know, you don't have to pretend all the time." Her breath caught. She looked at him, startled. What do you mean? He shrugged lightly. You're really good at smiling. But sometimes it feels like you're carrying something heavy. The words settled between them. Sabrina swallowed, her defenses wavering. I'm fine, she said automatically. Dylan didn't push. He just smiled, a gentle, understanding smile. Whenever you're ready, he said. As he walked away, Sabrina realized something unsettling. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Sabrina never thought of herself as someone worth noticing. She blended well into groups, reliable, agreeable, present but never demanding attention. She was the one people leaned on quietly, the one who listened more than she spoke. But Dylan noticed her. He noticed how she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear when she was nervous, how her laugh softened when she forgot to guard it, how her eyes lit up when she spoke about music, about harmony and meaning, and the way voices could say what words couldn't. You're really funny. No, he said one afternoon as they waited outside their respective rehearsal rooms. She blinked. I am, he smiled. Yeah, you just don't try to be. The compliment startled her more than she cared to admit. No one had ever said that before, not Mark, not anyone. She laughed awkwardly, brushing it off, unaware that the simple way she existed, kind, thoughtful, sincere, was exactly what made her stand out. Laughter between rehearsals. The days passed quickly, measured by rehearsals and shared meals, vocal warm-ups and quiet breaks. Somewhere between the second and third day, laughter found its way back into Sabrina's life. Dylan was the cause of it. He had a way of telling stories that turned ordinary moments into something amusing. He teased gently, never crossing lines, always careful of her comfort. Once, after a particularly exhausting rehearsal, he offered her a bottle of water and said, I think we just sang our souls out. She laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. The sound surprised her. Mark noticed too. Good rehearsal today, Mark said later, smiling as usual. You seem lighter. Sabrina nodded, unsure how to explain something she herself didn't fully understand. She was lighter, and she didn't feel guilty about it. Sabrina began to notice the way Dylan looked at her. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't bold. It was the kind of look that lingered just a second longer than necessary. The kind that held curiosity, admiration, and something softer she couldn't yet name. She caught it during group dinners, when conversation buzzed around them, during walks through the city when their shoulders brushed, during quiet moments when the world seemed to pause just long enough for their eyes to meet. She looked away every time, unsure of what it meant. Mark, meanwhile, was becoming distant, not unkind, just occupied. His attention was focused elsewhere, his laughter shared freely with Lena and others. The ache she once carried dulled, no longer sharp, just faint. Sabrina wondered when that had happened. By the fourth day, something had changed. When Sabrina sang, it no longer hurt. The notes flowed freely, no longer tangled in longing or restraint. Her voice felt stronger, steadier, like it had finally found room to breathe. Their final rehearsal before the competition was intense. Emotions ran high, every harmony mattered. As they sang, Sabrina caught Dylan watching from the side of the hall, his expression unreadable. She held the note, letting it resonate, feeling something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Hope. After rehearsal, Dylan approached her quieter than usual. You were incredible today, he said simply. Her cheeks warmed. Thank you. There was a pause, a shared silence that didn't feel awkward at all. I'm glad I met you, he added. Sabrina smiled, her heart responding in ways she hadn't anticipated. So was she. When Mark becomes distant, Sabrina noticed the distance before she felt its weight. Mark wasn't avoiding her. He still greeted her warmly, still exchanged familiar smiles. But something had shifted, subtly, almost kindly. Their conversations were shorter now, less frequent, no longer confessional, she realized. With a quiet sense of clarity, that it wasn't loss she was feeling. It was release. She watched Mark laugh with Lena during lunch, the scene no longer slicing through her heart. There was no bitterness, no jealousy, only a gentle acceptance. She had loved him in the way people love what feels safe and familiar, but love, she was learning, could also be something that made space instead of filling it with ache. That night, she found herself thinking less about what she had lost and more about what she had found. Something soft begins the evening before the competition. The city seemed quieter. Sabrina and Dylan walked side by side along the sidewalk outside the hotel, the glow of streetlights painting everything in gold. You nervous? He asked. She nodded. A little. Okay, a lot. He chuckled softly. That makes two of us. She looked at him, surprised. Really? Yeah. Nationals are no joke. There was a pause. You know, he continued, I'm really glad you're here. The words were simple, but the way he said them made them feel like more. Sabrina smiled, her heart fluttering in a way that felt unfamiliar but welcome. Something soft was beginning, and for once she didn't try to push it away. The day of the Nationals, the day arrived wrapped in anticipation. Backstage buzzed with voices, warm-ups echoing through the halls. Performers paced, stretched, whispered last-minute reminders to themselves. Sabrina adjusted her outfit, her hands trembling slightly. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. "You belong here," she told herself. From the wings, she spotted Dylan across the room. He met her gaze, offering a reassuring smile and a small nod. It grounded her. The group took the stage, voices blending into practiced harmony. Every note felt purposeful, every breath intentional. When they finished, applause washed over them. Sabrina stepped off stage, heart racing but calm. She had sung without pain. Sabrina sat among her group as the next chorale prepared. She scanned the stage absent-mindedly until she saw him. Dylan stepped forward. Her breath caught. She hadn't known. As the first notes filled the hall, his voice rose, clear, powerful, and impossibly warm. It wasn't just technically perfect, it was felt. The song unfolded slowly, tenderly, every word heavy with emotion. And then she realized he was looking at her. Not fleetingly, not by accident, but deliberately. The world seemed to narrow, the music wrapping around her like a confession she wasn't prepared to receive. Her groupmates whispered excitedly, eyes wide, already captivated. Sabrina couldn't move, couldn't look away. For the first time, she saw Dylan not just as the boy who had caught her, but as the one who had been singing to her all along. The last note lingered in the air long after Dylan's voice fell silent. For a moment, no one moved. Then the room erupted in applause, thunderous, overwhelming, deserved. Sabrina felt frozen in her seat, her hands trembling as she clapped. Her chest felt tight, her eyes stinging. The song had felt personal. She told herself it was imagination, that performers often connected with the audience, that she wasn't special. But when Dylan stepped back into line with his group, his gaze found hers again, steady, unmistakable. And this time he smiled. Eyes across the crowd backstage, excitement buzzed like electricity. Girls from Sabrina's chorale whispered excitedly, eyes shining. "Did you hear his voice? He's gorgeous. I think I'm in love." Sabrina smiled politely, but her heart was elsewhere. Across the room, Dylan was surrounded, congratulated, admired, pulled into conversations. Yet somehow, through it all, his attention kept drifting back to her. When their eyes met again, something unspoken passed between them. Not urgency, not promise, just understanding. After the applause awards were announced in a blur, Dylan's chorale placed first. Cheers erupted, tears were shed, photos taken. Sabrina felt genuinely happy for him, pride swelling in her chest. As people crowded around Dylan, she lingered at the edge. Unsure if she belonged in that moment, then he looked up and saw her. He excused himself gently, weaving through the crowd until he stood before her. "I was hoping I'd find you," he said quietly. Her heart raced. "Congratulations." "Thank you," he replied. "It means a lot." They stood there, surrounded by noise, yet wrapped in a quiet that felt entirely their own. They stepped outside together. The night air cool against warm skin. "I didn't know you were a soloist," Sabrina said softly. Dylan smiled, a little shy. "I didn't tell many people." She hesitated. "Why?" He looked at her, really looked at her. "Because I didn't want you to see me as that first." Her breath caught. "I wanted you to know me before the music." Silence settled between them, not heavy but full. Sabrina realized she didn't need explanations, didn't need declarations. Right there in front of them, the city lights shimmered around them as they stood side by side. 5 days ago, Sabrina had arrived carrying heartbreak she thought she'd never put down. Now it felt distant, faded. She glanced at Dylan, meeting his gaze without fear this time. No expectations, no promises, just two people standing where they were meant to be. Whatever came next could wait. This moment was enough. The night deepened. Sabrina thought about everything she had learned. That love didn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it came quietly, catching you when you were about to fall. She smiled at Dylan, and he smiled back, unbothered by what tomorrow might ask of them. All that mattered was right there in front of them. And for the first time, Sabrina didn't wonder if she was enough. She knew.